let's look at what the discussions are this morning. But I first will have to introduce my guests. And my guests are to my extreme left, or just, well, they're very close to me. Eric Chum is a member of the MPP at the Trobo constituency. He's the party's vice chairman. Thanks for joining me.
Okay.
Today is his birthday as well. How are you?
I'm good.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I love your dress. That's why you're in white?
Yes.
It should signify something.
Definitely, yes, of course.
All right. Are we having a party?
Not really, not quite.
Just a drink up?
We will have it.
What time?
Maybe later in the evening.
I'll be there. Okay. And then we also have Dr. Ahmed Jinapor. And he is an educationist, a lecturer, and there's one aspect he doesn't often reveal. He's a businessman as well. Okay. So, Ahmed Jinapor, thanks for joining me this morning.
Asking me why I'm also in white.
Okay, why are you also in white? Is it your birthday?
We look like twins.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Because I didn't have lights this morning. So I couldn't iron.
So this one was the only one
this
that
was in the
ironed.
wardrobe. So
Right. So I was about to ask you, did you guys communicate?
No.
Okay, maybe in solidarity. Apparently, they haven't been on set the same time before, so it's just a coincidence, though. But it's all good. Now, we need to look at the subject. We'll be talking about the IMF, very crucial, and despite government going for the Eurobond. But of course, we have to talk about energy. Now, the ECG seems very much confused about when it wants to bring out a load shedding timetable, because what they had intended bringing out apparently has just gone haywire, because we can't get supplies from Nigeria in the form of gas, and as a result of that, now they have to do some changes to the quantity of gas for the generation plants. And then we'll be looking at a last subject that has always caught the eyes of many critics over the last couple of days: Shraj, Boss, and then his her own directives as to whether an amount should be spent on her rent, etc. And then we'll talk about the whole subject of public officials and whether they need to be a lot more responsible in how they use public funds. But let's look at the subject on the front page of the Daily Graphic: free range along beaches. If you go to Dubai, you go to Brazil. We just went to Brazil, etc. The beach is a good resource to generate a lot more investment. I start with you. What do you say about this? Free range along beaches. People are just defecating indiscriminately.
Well, first of all, let me say good morning to your
Morning.
viewers and to wish my very good friend. This is the first time we've met, but it looks like by coincidence.
You guys look alike. It's as if you're from the same store.
I hear you.
I'm married to his sister, but he doesn't know. I'm married to a Gonja woman.
Oh, okay.
So I'm his akunta.
He's
I told you guys are from the same stock. You know the stock. You see that. Okay, please go ahead.
So I think I don't think this is something new. I mean, Roland, it's not a daily graphic that will tell you that people are defecating at the beaches. And it's not just at the beaches. We have people defecating at other places. I think it raises a bigger picture. And it's something that, as a country in the 21st century, especially when we are hit with cholera, is something that we should more or less be reflecting on. I mean, how can we say we are civilized? And how can we say we are a gateway to what? West Africa, or Africa, so to speak, and we don't have a place of convenience? That should be the first thing that anybody who is trying to get accommodation should ask for. If you are going to get accommodation, the first thing you are asking for is, look, will you get a place of convenience? Will you get a place to bath? These are the two most important things that you need to look at. So if that is the case, then it should become an integral part of what? Of any building. And I quite remember not too long ago, I think the AMA did come out with a policy that every house should have, is it a toilet facility or something of that sort. I don't know where it's gotten to. So for me, it's very, very important for us to prioritize our needs. I think getting a place of convenience is of more importance, Roland, than street naming and house numbers and all those kind of things. So I don't know what the graphic is trying to tell us today, that this is something that is going on. We all know it's something that is going on. I mean, you talked of Brazil, where we are looking at the beaches being centers of attraction and tourism and stuff like that. Ours, unfortunately, is not. And it's indicative of our position as a third world underdeveloped country. It's not just about the beaches being a place of attraction, but it should be a place whereby, at the end of the day, we do know very well that, look, most of the cholera cases that we've had, Roland, you know very well they are along the coastal belt, you know. And why is it so? It's so because they don't have places of what convenient. I think hygiene is something that as a country we haven't, or we don't seem to take seriously. And unfortunately and quite regretfully, it looks as if this whole hygiene issue seems to be what? Eroding. Because I can say for a fact that 20 years ago, the issue of hygiene was not that of a major issue as it is today, especially when it comes to some of the populous cities like Accra, Kumasi, and those things. Because, look, at the end of the day, we are growing in population, but the facilities are not there. You know, even how to dispose of garbage is a serious issue. So I do not want us to oversimplify this issue, to condemn as we always do. That, look, Ghana, we do our things at the beaches. I mean, can you imagine for a fact that somebody is being interviewed and the person still have this mindset that when you go to the beach to do your thing, I mean, you get the air blowing through, whatever it is, in the 21st century. So I think it's good the graphic has published it. It's more or less, it reminds us of where we are as a people. But I strongly believe we need to come out with, I mean, policies that will address this thing once and for all, and not policies that are politically motivated to get political points. When the AMA did say that, look, we are going to do something on that sort, the first question that came to mind is that, look, is it realistic? Is it something that can be attained? Is it practical? For all you know, as it stands now, it's not, because maybe people have these houses, but they don't have the facilities to put up the toilets. So the money that probably, and I'm speaking as an education, the money that probably would have been used to buy a laptop to give to somebody at Fufusu who doesn't have electricity, who doesn't have a teacher to instruct, that money could have been channeled into building toilets. So it goes back to the point that, look, we need to prioritize our needs.
While prioritizing, the basic thing is about enforcement of what the regulation should be. And we seem to be failing on the path, Eric.
Yes, it's true, and I think that this is probably the second or third time that we've actually touched on this issue in relation to what my brother said, even about cholera. And I think that it's important that we get to the point where we take the bull by its horns and deal with this matter once and for all. And it's at specific areas. I mean, you know, you can sort of limit it to the beaches and everything, but even elsewhere, when you go up north and certain places, even the statistics is actually even more dire than along the coast, which means that there's a certain mindset that needs to even change. Because, I mean, we can't continue like this. I mean, in this day and age, you pick up the Daily Graphic. I mean, somebody walks into this country for the very first time, and this is
the most circulated
daily newspaper, and this is what they see. And in terms of how even in the correlation between this and investment, in terms of our tourism industry and all that, has to be checked. Because, I mean, we go to, for instance, we are going to be talking about the Eurobond and the IMF and all that. When, luckily for us as a people, we've inherited natural resources that we can actually take advantage of to actually generate resources, funds, revenue in this country without resorting to going to, if you go to places like Thailand and Indonesia and all that. Vietnam and all that they do is that tourism, they have a way of basically harnessing the resources that they have to make it, beneficial to the country. But then for us, what do? We actually leave it to go to waste, and then sort of still tap into some old school and I'll say archaic mindset. I mean, the fact that somebody is even actually alluding to the fact that it's meant to pacify the gods is actually ridiculous, to say the least. But this is what they believe in, which means that in terms of even education and the literacy levels of our people, it's a factor. Because, if you can believe strongly that doing something like that actually has any sort of benefit at all, then we are like a long way away from actually developing this country. And we need to take, like I said, a bipartisan or a non-partisan approach to some of these issues, where we go to the communities and make sure that people understand that we can't still be doing these things. Because, I mean, in as much that you put some sort of responsibility on government in terms of driving change, and then in terms of facilitating some of these things, we need to change our mindset along some of these things. Otherwise, we'll still be stuck in the dark ages.
Roland, very quickly, if you don't mind, I think Eric made an important point that I want to add something to it. You know, this country, one of the biggest challenges that we've been facing is how to more or less make use of, waste or whatever it is. I was at Valley View University a couple of days ago to do some work for National Accreditation Board. And I realized that one of the things that they have done is to use urine, what in Ashanti we call Johnso. They turn it into fertilizer to fertilize their farm. You understand what I'm saying? You go to countries like Norway and other Scandinavian countries, we are told they go to buy, waste, human waste, to use it for whatever they are using it for. Look, the fact of the matter is that I sitting here as an ordinary person, I do not have the know-how in how to manage affairs of a country and stuff like that. That is why I vest that responsibility into somebody by voting for A or B. That, look, come and shape my life such that I become a better person. So I strongly believe, and it's not just limited to the NDC government, I think it's been and it should be the responsibility of government, our leaders, to come out with policies, programs to deal with these issues.
Renewable
this. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm an ordinary person living somewhere, I don't want to mention the name of a community, I don't have toilet at my area, right? And you say that, look, I should not defecate at the beach. Meanwhile, there's no toilet. I can't defecate in my room. What else do you expect me to do? I'm compelled to go and defecate at the beach. If I'm a landlord and I'm collecting so much money, and you are telling me that, look, my brother, make sure that you have toilets in your house. Meanwhile, there's nobody to ensure that I have toilets in my house. Will I do that? No. So I think the responsibility and the onus lies on our leaders. I have always said that, look, I do not expect that much from a government. I just want something small.
You want basics.
Basics. So if Roland is party A and is able to address the issue of cholera and filth and toilet, then he leaves. Eric comes in. Eric is not going to address that issue. He's going to build on it.
What is it? I try to have my guests speaking very passionately on a number of subjects.
But just something quite interesting. You see, especially some of us that went to boarding schools, right? And this is supposed to be the stage where people's mindset and ideas are shaped. And I can bet you can go to boarding school for 7 years and you will do free range. In most places.
Yeah, because the toilets, they are not the best.
They are inadequate, and probably there's no flowing water. There's no running water.
So it's as if we're used to.
Yeah, so basically, you go through secondary school, even the universities, right? And then you go through all that education, and then you come out as a public official. There's nothing wrong with that.
But we travel to other